I'm going to go ahead and call this zoning board of appeals for December 15th, 2021 to order. When we call your name, please provide your name as well as your address for the record. That's part of the requirement for a Zoom meeting. And this time, Asman, Friedrich,
Here, Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, Michigan.
Orlick,
Here, 613 Kane Street, Mount Pleasant, Isabella County.
Raisinin,
Here, Isabella County, Mount Pleasant, Michigan.
Stressman,
Present, 215 East Chippewa Street, Mount Pleasant, Michigan, Isabella County.
thank you. White. Okay, we have a quorum. At this time, we usually we welcome our crossover member, Corey. And how many years have you been doing this for us, Corey?
I think it's 3 now.
Is it 3?
I think
Oh,
so.
Great. We really appreciate it.
No,
Give us,
no, you've been here longer than 3 years.
You think?
I think so.
Yeah, definitely. You were
Maybe
here for
4.
a couple years before the pandemic.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
I can't keep track of it. I thought it was 2, but I didn't want to call them on. Thank you.
I
So,
appreciate that.
yeah. So the first order of business is going to be to the election of our officers, both a chair and a vice chair.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if I could suggest, make this a motion if we need to, that this election of officers be for terms from December 2021 to January 2023. There's no point, I think, in doing a 1-month thing. Okay,
I
if that's
agree.
acceptable to everyone.
That's acceptable.
I support that.
Okay, so this would be, we're looking for a chair, nominations for a chair that would run through the end of 2022. Do we have any nominations?
And I will nominate Member Rassinen.
Mhm. Do we have support?
Support.
Support.
Are there any others? At this time, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. I'll turn the meeting over to Chairman President. Thank you.
Thank you all. At this point in time, I will open the floor for nominations for the vice chair.
I nominate Pete Orlick.
I
Vice chair.
support. Commissioner Orlick, are you still willing to serve as vice chair?
Yes, I am. Mhm.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, all those in favor of Commissioner Orlick serving as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you, Commissioner Orlick, for serving as our vice chair. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes that you would like to make? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I have to time out. That was unanimous for approval of the agenda. The agenda has been approved. Brian, I know that voting during a virtual meeting, we're supposed to do roll call. Are we still okay with what we've done so far?
We're okay here. When we get down to the case itself, then we will do the roll call.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. The next item of business on our agenda tonight is the approval of minutes from our September 23rd, 2020 meeting. If we can remember that far back, are there any changes that anyone would like to introduce to those minutes as they have been submitted?
Move to approve as is.
Do I have support for Commissioner Friedrich's motion?
Support.
All those in favor, that was Commissioner Stressman, I believe. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as submitted unanimously. The next item on the agenda is communications. Mr. Kinch, do we have any communications for you to report?
I don't have anything to share with you at this time.
Then moving on, we are now at the public comment portion of our meeting. This is the time during the hearing when the floor is opened up to anyone who wishes to come forward and speak. We typically reserve this time for comments that are not related to a case being presented this evening. We have no one in our meeting who is not here for the case at hand. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment not related to this case? Seeing no comments, I will close the public hearing portion of our, the public comment portion of our hearing tonight. And this evening, moving on, we have one hearing, one case to present to the board. Before I begin, for the record, I am going to go over our board procedures after I put on my reading glasses. In accordance with our established bylaws and board procedures, the appellant will be called forward to state their case. Following the appellant's presentation, the public hearing will then be opened. Anyone who wishes to address the board will come forward, sign in and state their name and address, which is part of our permanent record. Each person will be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. In addition, each person will be allowed to address the board only one time unless they have new and pertinent information to share. The public hearing will then be closed. Any correspondence received regarding the case will be presented to the board. The board will then enter into discussion. All motions will be made in the positive to avoid confusion. This does not necessarily mean the person making the motion is in favor of the request. It will take 3 positive votes to approve a request. Any request which is denied shall not be brought back to the board for a period of 1 year. The board reserves the right to ask questions of the appellant at any point throughout the hearing. And we have quorum. So, Mr. Kinch, will you introduce our case?
I will. This is our case number 02-2021. This is an application that had been filed by Robert Baltarez, the owner operator of the Taco Boy location at 804 South Mission Street. He's looking for some relief under section 154-410B4, Roman numeral 2-4, which addresses requirements outlined under the zoning ordinance for drive-through restaurants, drive-through establishments. The property is roughly 4.4 acres, 18,075 square feet. It is zoned CD4. It's in the general urban character district. Future land use is mixed low, which is the areas will be less intense than the CD4 area, but still provide needed services through a mix of building types. Highlighted those sections in your report as well. Is it possible to share the screen here?
Yeah,
Can you
1
go-
second, I gotta make you a co-host.
Sure, I guess I should ask that question. You good?
Should be able to try it, yeah.
Can you see that?
Nope. Not yet, Brian.
Do I need to do something on my end to share my screen?
Should be a green share screen button at the bottom of your
Oh, there we
Zoom.
go.
There you go.
There we are.
Do that. You guys get to see all the things I have open on my desktop. And so these are the pertinent sections that we're going to be reviewing this evening. The first one that we'll be looking at talks about the required stacking space associated with a drive-through restaurant. The city standards call for 200 feet. In this case, you'll see from the site plan that I have on a couple of slides here that roughly 120 feet. 120 feet allows them to have the stacking space without interfering with maneuvering space and such with the existing parking that's out in front of this business. You can see what we have here. The order point that's been in the back of this building. As you note in the application, Mr. Baltarez noted that this site had been used by Mission Pharmacy as well as Tony's Restaurant, and they had an existing drive-through window. This function is probably a little different than what we normally associate with some of the other drive-throughs and such, where we would have an order point and then you drive up to the window. This one, they're actually driving up to the window, ordering their food, and then if they need to additional time, they'll have them pull forward and then bring the food out to them. So there is no order point, it's the window itself. And then the other issue that we'll be looking at is the screen wall requirement in the back side of the building. Anytime a property abuts a CZ district, in this case it's a school, it's required to have a masonry wall. There is a line of trees, and there's also a 6-foot fence that the owner has installed. And you'll see from some of the other slides here that it opens up to the Fancher School, essentially their playground, which is here. So there's a substantial distance between the existing wall where they're using parking and so on, the fence, I should say, and the actual building. Same thing, this is looking towards the east. You can see that there's established tree line there, and then of course there's a 6-foot fence. And so when we first were in touch with Mr. Beltraz, it was for the use of the window. And one of the things that you noted in the application was during some of the closures and so on associated with the pandemic early on, their business is primarily a sit-down establishment. They've been in business for a number of years, 13 or 14 years, I believe they noted in the application at this current site. They rely heavily on the parking out front and the sit-down feature. Once that was closed down by the state as part of the pandemic, they decided to open up the window. In good faith, they understood that it was an existing window and didn't believe that they would have issues with it. So we stopped out, let them know that the city regulates these types of establishments. What we're concerned with is the safety, how it impacts the streets with stacking spaces and so on, as well as circulation around the property. How does it impact pedestrians and such? And so what we want to make sure is that we're not having traffic flowing out into, in this case, the southbound lane of Mission Street while they're into the stacking lane looking to order and such. So what I'll do is I'll go through just quickly to give I don't know if you all had a chance to drive through here and get kind of familiar with it, but the drive-through portion on this building is over on the north side. There's a small sign. You go up through the parking area to the back side. There's a small sign here to kind of guide you. You can see the existing concrete and the order point here. There's a menu that's out here. People come up, order their food, and they can either accept it through that window, or again, there's a staging area over on the other side of the building where they'll bring that out. So there's two sections that we're looking at tonight, and it's under the 154-410, a couple of the subsections, and it talks about the 200-foot stacking space, to reduce that to 200 feet, and then consideration for the screening wall to allow the 6-foot in the existing tree line to remain, taking into consideration that we are buffering a playground in this case, and there's a considerable distance between the actual drive-through and a building. So I think I've covered that. I'm sure Mr. Beltraz will tell you a little bit more about the business and how it functions and how we got here, but trying to walk them through this process, and that's kind of where we're at this point.
Okay, Brian, the masonry wall requirement would need to be how tall?
6 feet.
So
6
that we don't have a problem with the height. It's simply the material. Is that correct?
It's simply materials. And I guess I should qualify this a little bit. When I said walking through the process, this is going to be a 2-step process, assuming that the ZBA can grant some relief here this evening. This case would then move into the before the Planning Commission for a special use permit for that drive-through. Your action will run with the property. So if the business is ever sold, another business could come in and operate a restaurant with a drive-through. So any changes to that may require it to come back in depending on the changes. We'll see if we have an order window or something that's reducing that stacking space, for example, because we take that measurement from the ordering point. They may have to come back to the ZBA as well as the Planning Commission, depending on where that ends up landing. So, okay.
So Brian, I have a quick question. So
Sure.
our decision, I want to make sure I understood you correctly, is tied to the property and not the business.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
All right, Brian, I don't want to be left out here, so I do have one question too.
Okay.
So that the floor plan or the overhead drawing you had of the property, I'm guessing this is exactly to scale, and moving the drive-through lane to the other side of the building would not add an additional 80 feet to make it compliant.
I think part of the issues that, and I'll let Mr. Belterez correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the kitchen is in this location, so they're making the food and they're bringing it out that window. Bringing it over here, I think, is part of their dining area. Is that correct, Mr. Belterez?
Actually, bringing it to the other side, I have a small building that I lease out to the escape room.
Okay,
So I would have no access to move it to the other
that
side.
is right in here, right in here.
Oh, I'm not talking about moving the window itself, but you know, where you have 120-foot stacking lane, if you actually had people come around the south side of the building up to the window, that it looks like it's probably about the same distance.
Yeah, here's the take on that. If you look at that section I've highlighted, it says a 200-foot stacking lane must be provided on site measured from the pickup windows. The stacking lane may not impede site circulation, and it actually would reduce circulation here, the drive aisle.
Okay.
So that's why we started the measurement here.
Okay.
And like
Yeah,
I said,
I thought you were talking bringing it up this way, so, okay.
and like I said, the other end on the south side there, there is another business in with my building.
That is
That's
correct.
why I wouldn't be able to move it to the other side.
I don't think Corey meant move the window. I think Corey meant instead of like
Okay.
changing the way you drive up from one side to the other side.
Oh, okay.
Like as in like where you're coming from the north side of the building around. And if I understood Corey's question correctly, he was asking if you could change but that would put the passenger window.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't think of that. Yep. That is what I was asking, Laura. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the issue I had with that thought, Corey, was that it puts the passenger window at the order window.
Right. Okay.
Gonna bring a buddy.
We've had
Corey,
people
I
try it.
only
We've
know
had people
about-
come in the wrong way.
Corey, I only know about changing the direction of the drive-through being the passenger window because we had a case like this some years ago with another parking lot variance, and we couldn't figure out why they wouldn't do it the other way. And then somebody said, oh, well, it's the passenger car window.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Hey, any further questions for me? I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself then and let you have the applicant speak.
Yes, Mr. Balterez, if you would please come forward. If you would please at this point present your case to us.
Okay, first I want to thank you guys for taking this into consideration. We have been in Mount Pleasant for 50 years now this year. We've been an established kind of icon. We've had to move around a little bit. We were at one point on Preston Street, and then when the party store had that big fire a few years back, well, approximately about 13 years ago, that's when we had to move and relocate again. And this is when I obtained this property. And like Mr. Hench had spoke, I was under the assumption that when I purchased the property, that drive-through window was for me to use because it was already there for Mission Pharmacy and for Tony's. And I didn't realize till Mr. Hench told me that, you know, that's not legally permitted. And I was kind of in shock because I figured it was at the time. The drive-through is very viable to my business at this point. With the COVID rapidly increasing, we've already been advised by our health department inspector that we may be looking at another shutdown here in the near future. Without that, I don't believe after 50 years that I would be able to survive. And I certainly don't want to have to tell 14, 15 employees that you don't have jobs anymore. So I'm just hoping that the board takes into consideration, everything that I'm trying to do. I've always been a big supporter of this town. I've always done a lot of different things for other groups in need, and I'd like to be able to continue helping others too.
Does anyone on the board have any questions at this time?
I have one. When you bought the property, was there any discussion of the drive-through window and its use with the realtor or with the seller?
Yes, there was a realtor at that point when I asked them about it, said, "Oh yeah, you can use it. Tony's is using it, so I'm sure it's okay for you to use." I did not know it was not permitted legally.
No, apparently did he either. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Well, I guess I would like some clarification when that building was converted from the old 7-Eleven to the drugstore and they put the drive-through in there for pickup. Would that use not run with the building, as we stated earlier, that this variance, if given, would run with the building? Is that not the case with that?
I can respond to that. The city zoning ordinance, when they have a non-conforming item or use on property, that use, as long as it's continuous, they can run with different businesses. But if they cease operation for a year or more, then anything that goes after that has to come back in compliance with the city zoning. And so that's how we got involved. It hadn't been used, so I had stopped down and talked with the applicant. And there again, we're going to try to walk him through the process to get where he needs to be with the special use permit. Unfortunately, he needs a couple of variances to be considered before moving into the planning commission review.
So for instance, another like property down the street, which is now Right Way Auto Sales and used to be a McDonald's, which had an established drive-through. So if they've been taking periodic payments through the window over the course of the years they've been operating, that would allow them to maintain that drive-through status. But if they fail to do so, then that would nullify that drive-through option. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, as long as they can demonstrate they've continuously used it, yes, they can make that argument. So
Okay.
I have a question because the variance would go with the property and not the business. My question has to do with the signage. Brian, you had photographs of the signs in a couple of the slides. I'm wondering if the signage for the drive-through and making sure that people understand they can't block the space for the drive-through is clear and visible enough. I did go to the site and look at that, and that was one of the questions that I had is should we, number one, Brian, for you, do we have the authority to ask for better signage? And I guess second would be your opinion, is that necessary?
I don't know if we have authority for the signage. I think you want to make sure that he has good, safe traffic flow through the property. If you believe that granting the variance, that we need to ask for those things as a condition, I think that's fair. But the signage that they had, I haven't received any complaints since they've been using it. And
Okay.
As we've been going through this process, we've allowed this to continue, and there hasn't been any issues until the ZBA and the Planning Commission could take in these things into consideration.
Okay.
We do also have a big arrow in the driveway there.
Right. Yep.
Besides a do not block drive.
I think I had that picture in here somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah, it's in here. I think I'm on it, but yeah, there is an arrow right here on the ground.
Okay.
And there is no parking lines. There's 2 open spaces there with no parking lines.
Yeah.
Also to show the drive.
Mhm. Yep. Sorry, keep bumping around here, but yeah, here.
Are there any more questions? Does anyone on the board have more questions at this time? Okay, having no other questions at this point in time, I will open the public hearing. I don't see that anyone else has joined our meeting to make a comment, so I think it's just the board, city staff, and the applicant. So if there is someone here in the meeting that I don't know and you'd like to speak in our public hearing about this case, please come forward and state your name and address for our record. I don't think we have anybody, so I will close the public hearing portion of this particular case. Mr. Kinch, I will move on. Do you have any correspondence for us?
I do. I believe you have the memo dated 12/6/21 from our DPW folks. Engineering staff went on record as they want to make sure that whatever action we take, that it does, the drive-through stacking layout must not impede the traffic on the Mission Street. Street department had no comments. The assistant DPW director had no comments, and along with the DPW director. Water department left some information on the report that talked primarily about our cross connection program as well as water service. And I don't believe there's any changes in either of those for this site. Laura, can you correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't our DPW staff, or not DPW, our fire folks had no objection? I'm pretty sure that.
That's correct, Brian.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure she has it in here. I just can't flip through these pages quick enough. So that's pretty much what I have in the way of communications.
Thank you, Mr. Kinch. At this time, the board will enter into our discussion on the case.
What I would like to do at the outset here, Laura, if we can, there are two distinct issues. And so I would move that we consider these separately, that we start off by considering the fence issue and deal with that, and then we move on to the stacking issue.
I like that idea. Pete, you did say you will move, so I'm
Yes,
going to,
right. Mhm.
I will consider that a formal motion from Vice Chair Orlick. Do I have support for his motion to separate the two issues before us into distinct motions for
Second.
approval? Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chair Orlick, a support from Commissioner Friedrich. All in favor of the motion on the table, which is to separate the issues of screening material from drive-through stacking variants to two distinct motions, please say aye.
And also to begin with the screen issue.
Yes, okay.
Take that one up first, yes.
I think
Yes,
we need to do it as a roll call, Chair.
we can do
Chairman,
that. We will
Yep.
do that as a roll call. Let me get my roll. Let's see, Commissioner Stressman,
Aye, I'm in favor.
Commissioner Friedrich,
Aye.
Vice Chair Orlick,
Aye.
and Commissioner Raisinin also votes an aye in the affirmative. So we have unanimously decided that we will separate the issues. At this time, let's discuss the screening issue.
I think the screening issue, given the situation that we're looking at here, it is up to code from the standpoint of height. It is a solid wall at this point in time. So I don't have a particular problem with that. The only thing would be in terms of the applicant realizing, and we've been through this for decades with the zoning board, that one of the reasons that you go with the cinder block or the concrete is that you have a lot less maintenance than you do with wood. But as long as there's the understanding that we would maintain that wood fence in good shape, I don't see a problem with this, and I think it's merited by the location.
I would also like to say that the tree line at the fence should be maintained as well. And so I agree with Vice Chair Orlick. So at this time, I will ask, do we have a motion on the screening portion of our decision tonight?
I would move that we approve a variance for the existing wooden fence and tree line, provided that these are well maintained by the occupant of the property for the future.
Vice Chair Orlick has presented us with the motion. Do we have a support?
Second.
At this time, I will take a roll call on Vice Chair Orlick's motion. And again, let me get my list. Commissioner Stressman,
I approve.
Commissioner Friedrich,
Aye.
Vice Chair Orlick,
Aye.
and Commissioner Raisinin, aye. The motion to grant the
I just want to jump in here real quick. I'm looking at the site plan and I want to just ask the question, we have landscaping, but I'm not sure all the landscaping is the applicants. I think part of it is on that school property.
Mhm.
Is that correct? We're asking him to maintain something he doesn't have ownership of.
That was kind of my thoughts too, but I thought we'd go into discussion before we had a vote.
That's my fault. That's my fault, Steve. I'm sorry.
Where does the property line end and is a tree line? Because I was by there today and I was kind of curious, is the tree line on the school playground or is there a chain link fence between the tree line and the school playground?
I think it's a combination of things. I think you got the tree
Right.
line is actually on the school property.
Mhm.
And there
we
is
can
a chain
acknowledge-
link fence also there. Yes.
I think we can acknowledge that it's there.
Right? Okay, so obviously then if that, and it was a little unclear, I was trying to figure out where that property line was and all. If the tree line is school line, not property line, then I would suggest that we simply remove the reference to the tree line and stick with the reference to the wall, to the wooden wall.
I think so. And I'm sorry, I was by there today and when I walked it, I thought that the tree line belonged on this property, but
I
looking
did too. Mhm.
But looking at the site plan, there is some confusion.
Yeah.
So
We do maintain it because the tree limbs and everything come hanging over. So we go out and we trim it up throughout the summer to keep it back away from everything.
Just for the record, do you want to acknowledge that it's open into a playground? There is quite a large open space there. I mean,
Yes, there is. Yeah, there is a lot of playground there.
and the chain link fence is on the school side of the trees, not the restaurant side of the trees. So that's another reason that I thought the trees belonged to this property. But I think as long as we have it in the record that the buffer, which is really what that is, the buffer between this property and the school playground is well maintained and appropriately maintained, then I think we've done our due diligence here. Do you agree, Vice Chair Orlick?
I do, and I agree with you. I looked at the property. It's kind of hard to see what the tree line was, but certainly the crucial issue, which is clearly in the applicant's control, is the wooden fence and that be properly maintained.
Yes, agreed. And Commissioner Stressman, I do apologize. We should have had discussion after the motion was on the floor, and I apologize for that. So now we can move forward. Is there a motion on the second part of our decision tonight? And then I will not forget to have discussion after a motion is on the floor.
Well, to get us going and to realize motions must be made in a positive manner, no matter how the mover of the motion ends up deciding, I will move that we approve a variance for the existing 120-foot stacking lane on this property.
I support.
Now, we have a motion and a support on the floor in the video, and we should discuss that. And this is a question, should we indicate that this is a unique situation because ordering and receipt of product is all done at the same window without kind of an order box area? Because this will go with the property, and do we need to make it clear that it is for the type of unique drive-through that this property has, where we're not looking at, a McDonald's or a Taco Bell or anything like that, where you've got a station where you order and then another window where you pick up, but a window where you voice order and pick up your food?
Well, to me, that really doesn't matter. The new zoning ordinance, which went into effect, as we know, well after this was originally constructed, the feeling was, and the research was, that 200 feet was essential for safety, and that consequently, we're looking here at an 80 feet reduction from what has been ascertained as in the city as a safe use and a safe layout for a stacking lane. I think, to me, that's the crucial issue. And I don't think we want to, given that, lay a precedent where there are some possibilities where we can substantially reduce the stacking lane length.
Okay. Is there other discussion?
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines as Pete, like since it stays with the property. So let's say a coffee shop goes in, in the future, and we've approved this 120-foot stacking lane, and the drive-through at the coffee place is actually really long, and they end up either blocking traffic coming into the parking lot, or they're backed out right out onto the street. And that intersection near there is not busy intersection.
No, it's a very busy intersection.
Yeah, so, but I do have concerns about that.
And I think the key thing is, because there was some of this in the write-up in the case file, and we've had some discussion of this, the zoning ordinance does not have two separate requirements, one for chain operations and one for independents. It's a 200-foot stacking lane for safety, regardless of who happens to be using the building and using the property. And I think that's the crucial element.
Yeah, and I think what I was trying to say is most drive-throughs have a separate place to order and a place to pick up.
Right.
And I'm trying to address the fact that if we grant this variance, there's only one spot where a car will stop. You don't have, and I think that should a different business go in and want to put in a different order location, we're going to have more traffic, or we're going to have it will be more plausible that this would become an issue. And so I would like to say that, like, this variance only works if you keep the drive-through exactly as it is right now. You can't add in an ordering station later. I don't think I'm making sense.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. And
We have no intentions of changing anything. And the way we run our drive-through is we can look out and see if there's any cars along the back there. And if we have more than 2 cars in line, we actually will always move the first car around the south side of the building, so everything moves. And we normally, and you can come by there at lunchtime or anytime, we normally don't have any more than maybe 4 or 5 cars at the most ever in our drive-through. and the way we move everything, there's really very little chance of anything backing up. The only time we would ever be super busy might be on Cinco de Mayo. But the way we run it, we make, because we want our customers to feel like we're waiting on and get taken care of as quick as we can. So that's why as soon as we have 2, maybe 3 cars there, we're moving the front car. So everything's always moving.
That makes sense, but I understand what Corey is saying, especially about a coffee shop. I think about the Starbucks over on Pickard where near the casino, where sometimes you've got 20 cars trying to go through that drive-through, and so we do have to think about the future and not just current occupancy. So that was my comment about keeping the drive-through as it is in order to try to maybe protect against a future use that would be more problematic.
Well, one of the things I think about future use for that site is I think the overall lot size for that single site is just too small for most major chains like a McDonald's or a Burger King or Taco Bell or any of these other large franchises, and I just can't see it unless the franchise could come in and buy additional property, basically the whole corner of the area, so.
Although one other concern I had too is that in order for us to grant a variance, there are a lot of criteria that need to be met. And I think in this case, almost all of them are met, but the one that I can't see being met in this instance, and if one of you can convince me of otherwise, that's great. But the first criteria we have is that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zoning district. I don't feel like this property itself is unique enough that I could say that they meet that criteria.
I would agree with you, Corey, on that exactly. That would be my feeling. And once we have this in, if we get another property of similar size and a developer comes in and wants to put some kind of drive-through, whatever the business happens to be, then you're running into the situation where you say, but you guys just allowed 120 feet rather than the 200 here in a very intense traffic area. And I don't think we want to go down that road. I think the people that designed the zoning ordinance used a lot of matrices to figure out the 200 is important.
I think that it is a little bit unique, and here's why. The reason I think it's unique is because the building is there with the drive-through already existing and a secondary business on the side of, he could get to 200 feet if he was able to move the drive-through window. But he can't move the drive-through window because there's a secondary business on the, at that site. But Brian, if you can put back up the site plan, if he moved the drive-through window, you could get to 100, you could get to 200 feet. If, even, especially if the drive-through window was moved to the south side of the building, but there's a different business there. And so I do think that makes this unique in a way that future development that's building a building wouldn't have. That that he is constrained by what's already there. And this particular site has historic use of a drive-through window at a place of business that is not a typical drive-through oriented business. So, you know, I kind of feel like we are meeting the extraordinary circumstance or the unique condition. I don't necessarily know if it's an extraordinary circumstance, but I do think that this particular building does give us, you know, a unique condition that would not necessarily be present in future developments.
Can I ask a question of the property owner?
Yes, please, Commissioner Stressman.
Chris, do you know how long your average wait time per customer is in your queue?
He's muted.
Can he be unmuted, or does he need to do that himself?
I think he needs to do it himself. I'm trying to. It just says ask to unmute. So, Robert, can you hit the unmute key? You can hear us?
Maybe hold up a sign, Brian?
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Okay. Average wait time there is approximately, when they get to the window, it's probably 5 minutes or less.
And if I'm familiar with the system that you have in place, the customer pulls to the window, orders their items that they want, and then if you don't have cars in queue, you serve at that point. But if there's cars in queue, you have them pull forward.
Yes, sir. We have a pull around to the side of the building.
How many vehicles can you accommodate in that waiting area?
I would say approximately 10 to 12 cars.
Okay, and then you have food runners take the items out.
Yes, sir.
Deliver it to the unit. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So if I understand this correctly on this 200-foot stacking, that's from the order window, or is that from the pickup window that 200-foot belongs to?
From the provided on the site, measure from the pickup window.
So it's measured from the pickup window.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, then from the order window, you don't have 200 feet to the street, correct? Or that's not required?
Correct.
Okay. So could we not take into a consideration that the customer orders the product, and if there is a queue in place, then they're asked to move forward? And should we take into account, say, roughly 10 additional parking spaces that these people can wait at? And what's the average distance of a full-size pickup? It is about 21 feet. So worst case scenario, 10 vehicles and their full-size pickup trucks at 21 feet. Wouldn't that add an additional 210 feet to this queue? Am I thinking this correctly? Because it doesn't seem that we're taking into account, he moves the queue along and he's trying to minimize the waiting time people are in the order line. So that's kind of how I'm looking at this.
Well, I think
Go ahead,
I think
Vice Chair Orlick.
certainly the applicant is trying to do what he can to manage the traffic on this property. And if we were in the situation where, as in some states, the variance does not go to a new owner, the variance is only granted to the existing owner, that I think that would be a real consideration. But we could have a change in this business next year. And that we may have someone in there who does not try to engage in that sort of managed behavior for traffic. And then you've got a problem.
So I think my question is, should our board move to approve this variance? How do we as a body word our motion granting approval such that we are protecting protecting the site from a future use that would not respect the intent that the intent of this applicant?
Brian, oh, go ahead.
So, that's my question is, can we word our approval in such a way that we are protecting against a harmful interpretation in the future?
Brian, like your input on this, but as I understand that the law in Michigan, going down that road would probably be held illegal if we had a new owner come in and challenge it. You have to take the variance at face value, and there it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're waiving the stacking space requirement only. So
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Take a vote, Laura.
Are there any other comments or questions?
Okay.
Okay,
Move for the question be called.
we can call the question and bring this to a vote.
Could you just, Laura, or have our secretary just reread the motion so everybody knows exactly what it is? Please?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Laura, could you please reread our motion, read our motion to us?
I had a motion to approve existing stacking of 120 foot.
Yeah, grant a variance for, yes, there's grant a variance for, it. Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Vice Chair Orlick,
No.
Commissioner Friedrich,
No.
Commissioner Stressman,
Yes.
and Chairman Raisinin also says yes. So we are tied. And in this instance, I believe the motion fails. Therefore, we need a motion to deny the variance.
So moved.
Do we have
Second.
support?
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to deny the variance for the stacking. Is there any discussion on this new motion?
May I say something?
every-
I guess I object because what is the difference between what I have and Mission Pharmacy next to me has a drive-through also, and they have the exact same thing I do. And that's where I guess, and without this drive-through, I'm going to be out of business.
Madam Chair, we
And after 50
been down
years,
this road, and I think we have to move it ahead. This would not be in order.
We have to call the question. So we now have a motion to deny the variance for the reduced drive-through stacking. And Vice Chair Orlick,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Stressman,
No.
Chairman Raisinin also votes no.
So, but we still go back to the original. You needed 3 votes to approve this, so we did not. get
Yes.
that. Mhm.
So at this,
So that being said, do we schedule this for another meeting next month? and hope that we have 5 people?
The issue is with a denied motion, he cannot bring it back before the board for a period of 1 year.
Well, and I think that's kind of trying terms because exactly as he said, we're in a COVID dominated society right now, and the state can come in at any point in time and shut him down. And as he said, if he gets shut down, he's all done. And I wholeheartedly believe what he's saying. And I think that's fair and unjust at this point in time.
I have to agree with Commissioner Stressman in that with this particular restaurant being predominantly a dine-in facility, a shutdown where restaurants that have drive-through capabilities will be able to continue to serve customers, and he won't is unfair and a little bit harsh, especially because this is a local business that has strong ties to our community.
So we're missing what, 2 voting members here tonight?
Just one.
One.
Okay.
You know, we do have a zoning ordinance. There's all sorts of things and activities that come up, but we've been through it. We've called the issue. I mean, the procedures in the ordinance is clear, and I understand some of the issues and the problems here, but yeah, this has been denied, and it can't be called back for a year.
Can you show me in the ordinance where it says about COVID?
Well, that's a red herring. You can't take into account individual things.
I'm sorry, but in this
You can
day
have
and
any
age,
business
it's
coming in
something that
and saying,
really
I
has
can't
to
do
be
this.
addressed.
And you have any business come in and say, we can't do this because of COVID or that. And so I'm not going to abide by a certain element of the ordinance. Can't run it that way.
I'm done. I'll just put my property up for sale. I've been in this town for 50 years, and I hate to have to leave this way.
We have to move forward. Mr. Kinch, do we have any old business to present?
I don't have anything to share for you tonight under old business.
Is there any new business?
Nope, there's no new applications pending, so I think about the only thing I can say is we're probably done for the rest of the year, obviously, and nothing coming at us in January, so.
Brian,
yes.
could I ask what happened to ZBA 01, that Burlington deal, the sign?
They end up revising their application and
Okay.
bringing the signs in compliance.
We're done, baby.
Good. Okay.
Okay, at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support?
Second.
All in favor of adjournment, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Have a great night.